one of the things I wanted to also, well, two things actually came up while you were, was you mentioned, you touched on it, was systemic racism. So if you wanted to talk another second about that and just how you were treated, but also then if you could also talk about the torture, which was the solitary confinement, and the ways that you were treated, which was so out of proportion. Like, let's even be generous and say there was some truth to like whatever they said, even if there was, the way you were treated was torture. It wasn't appropriate. It didn't fit the parameters of whatever that is. And at least from what I read about what you went through. So I want you to share, because many of our audience may not know what you went through.
Oh, yeah. Well, let me start from the second question. And they're talking about solitary confinement and the tortures. Well, let me put it right front. I am not the only one. And there are, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of prisoners who go through the solitary confinement, which is actually a torture. Look at the reports of the United Nations. They will tell you it's not normal. And do you know how it exists in the United States? I'll tell you, it doesn't. Formally, if you open any, jail rules, you will see special housing. You will see administrative segregation. You will never see solitary confinement. They hide it. I've met people who has been sitting in solitary cells for 6.5 years. How you like it? When they're just walls and there are 3 steps here, 2 steps there, and you don't even have a bunk bed. You have a concrete step where you sleep. It's extremely cold, and you cannot even get some money from the outside to buy a sweater. I was wearing men's pants. That's what they could somehow, thanks to Russian consuls, just because I was famous, to get me just men's pants. Look at this. Like, nobody talks about it. I've been in Oklahoma. There is a transfer center for prisoners. You know how we call this place? Shady Grady. You know why? Because nobody knows what's going on in this, in this darkness, in this terra incognita. But I'll tell you, they put me on solitary confinement there too. It's the special block on the 3rd floor where they typically keep men, but on the 3rd floor, they have a special unit for people who are in solitary confinement. So here were my bunkies. Like, you have an hour in turns, you go outside to a little room where you have a microwave and TV, 1 hour a day, okay? 23 hours you spend in the cold, very wet because they were very rainy, so water is everywhere. You basically, it's like a hell, an iron hell, and it's a box in the box, so you don't see what is outside. You don't have clock, you don't know how much time is it. Okay, this is your conditions of survival. Anyway, I know who my bunkies were. They were not with me, but in different cells. So this one of them, I'll give you an example. She was just mentally ill. She was, talking different voices. And when I would look at my little window in the door, I could see that she's really not well. You cannot put these people on solitary confinement. It doesn't help. It tortures them. And then, she was too loud and the guards didn't like her. Do you know what they did? They just tightened her to the chair, to the special chair. So she stays silent. It doesn't make any voices and doesn't run around her cell. Just tighten. And nobody knows this because, there is no Amnesty International that would go and say, okay, we are human rights defenders. We're going to fight for you. Nobody comes. The second girl who was there, and she is a girl, she's over age. She's over 18 years old. She was 15. And they supposed, she's not charged yet. She's supposed, not convicted. She's not charged yet. And she is on solitary confinement, 15 years old, just because she's a female underage, and then they cannot put her in the main facility. She has been, by the time I ended up there, she was there alone, a young little girl, a teenager, for almost 2 years alone.
What?
Can you imagine that?
No, it's horrible. It's horrifying. It's horrifying. It's absolutely, it's terrible.
Yeah. And you know, you try to put this word out, and why I'm talking about this, why I fight for the rights. By the way, she was Native, and we were talking about Native culture, because you know, Oklahoma, the majority are Native Americans.
Right.
Does anybody hear their voices? No. Does anybody want to hear their voices? Absolutely not. And God gave me a chance to speak publicly, and thanks to you, Tara, I could, you know, you see how emotional I am about this, because these women were around. I just can't close my eyes and don't pay attention. I'm going to fight anyway.
Well, I'm glad that we were able to, you know, bring you onto the show and connect you. And I'm hoping to connect you with others to let your voice be known, because it's really something that Americans don't talk about a lot, and it needs to be. And you talked about the institutionalized racism. You wrote that letter to Angela Davis.
Oh, by the way, about institutional racism, let me address this issue. You know what? I can talk about these things. I know there is a political correctness in the United States, but I'm going to tell the truth. You know what? I've been on the top of American political circles. I've been on different conferences in different private clubs. And guess what? In all private clubs where I have been, the majority of the servants are the Blacks. And nobody talks this, okay? Nobody talks about it. Nobody talks that when you go to a restaurant, you're going to see only people working low wages. And these are the Blacks, they are Latins, and the same people are going to end up in prison. They have no chance and no rights. There was one woman with me. She was from Mexico. She had a boyfriend, an American boyfriend, twice her age, and they had a child. So he just one day he comes, it was her birthday, and he just takes the child away from the mom. So she starts screaming and tries to, she's like a little Mexican. She's trying to fight him, saying like, give me my child back. He calls the police. Guess who ends up in prison? Her, because nobody cares. So they bring, and now I see all this news about, you know, they're bringing more immigrants to the United States. And you know what I can say? And you exactly know why do they need them? Because they're going to vote. They're going to vote with no IDs, all these people, but nobody else. But after that, after the day X, nobody cares. How they're going to survive, how they're going to go to schools, what their kids are going to eat. The majority of people will end up in prison because at 14, they ended up being prostitutes to earn their living, okay? They're gonna sell drugs because their best friend is gonna be the guy who sells them to other boys, to all these rich politicians and stuff. You know, all these girls in prison are talking about who are the best clients, the worst clients. They know them all. Now they put these ads online. And it all exists in America. And when now I read the news where they talk about, you know, the equal rights, oh, you kidding me? Like I've seen it. Go in prison, talk to these people, and talk about the equality to the people that cannot even read their charges because they don't know how. That, by the way, they put me on solitary for helping them. Is it normal at all? If people don't know how many years they're going to serve, this is the reality.
Yeah, it's been terrible.